Very good. So now we can begin today's Dhamma talk. And so far I've talked about the Anapanasati and demonstrated how easy it is to get jhanas. Oh, sorry. I'll start again. So far, the Lord Buddha never had this problem. He never had to hold a microphone. So far that I have talked about how easy it is to get into jhanas, but sometimes people say, well, it sounds easy, but I can't do it, people tell me. So on today's talk, I'm going to be talking about the problems and hindrances in meditation. And I'm not going to just talk about the 5 hindrances, because many of you know them and you can read them. I'm going to tell you about practical hindrances, of which the 5 hindrances form a part. But the first hindrance which I'm going to talk about is actually part of the 5 hindrances. It's the last hindrance of doubt. Because in today's world, where there are so many books on meditation, there are so many teachers of meditation, there are so many methods of meditation, it can be so confusing. I'm sure there's many other teachers who tell you, this is the way to meditate, do not listen to anybody else. And it does become difficult for people to try and find out what type of meditation to follow. They have doubts, and there's quite reasonable doubt. And so how can one overcome that doubt on the right method of meditation, the right interpretation of the path? And of course, you would think that you can look at the suttas, the Buddha's teachings, and find out a solution to your doubts there. But unfortunately, as well as the suttas, we have the commentaries, we have the Abhidharma, and sometimes that they are not just teaching the same thing. So often we get more confused. It is one of the reasons why that looking at the teachings of the Buddha, where he said to always don't follow a teacher, not a Thero or a great group of monks with great reputations, always see if the teachings are in line with what the Buddha said in the Sutta Pitaka. However, even if you look in the suttas, some monks, some great scholars, they interpret the suttas each in a different way. As someone once said, that we can pretty much know what the Buddha said, but do we know what he meant by those words? So there's always some leeway for interpretation. I've already given you an indication of that, because in something as basic as the word samadhi, that some monks regard that as meaning concentration, which gives a total different meaning to your meditation. And I say, no, it means stillness, which has another meaning altogether. So, because many even good monks, sincere monks, have different interpretations of even Pali words, it does make it difficult for you to understand which is the correct path and which is not the correct path. But there was a very simple teaching by the Buddha, which I'm now going to relate in a personal experience when I was a layperson. The particular teaching was the Buddha's advice to Upali, the Vinaya scholar, when he went into solitude to practice meditation, eventually became an arahat. And also the same instruction was given to the first bhikkhuni, Mahapajapati, on how to understand what is the Dharma, what is the teachings of the Buddha. And the Buddha said very succinctly, very briefly, that whatever teachings or practices, lead to a sense of, now I can't remember all the terms here, lead to things such as fading away of things. So you need a nibbida first of all. And nibbida is this feeling of like just not being interested, almost like a repulsion, a force away from the things of the world. Need to nibbida, viraga, things falling away, nirodha, cessation of stuff, upassana, which is peace, which is a very important thing to remember, that if they lead to peace, upassana, lead to even nibbana and enlightenment stages, if they lead to those sorts of things, that it must be the teachings of the Buddha, it must be the Dharma. He said that's actually how you know what is the teachings and what is not the teachings, by what they lead to. And as a young student at Cambridge, my vacations, if they weren't used working, trying to get some money to pay my college bills, then I used to go into, just north of England was the country of Scotland, where there was the only place I could find solitude in the mountains. Even then I enjoyed just taking a tent and walking in the hills and the mountains of the highlands of Scotland, where you wouldn't see many people, and meditating. And on one occasion in the far north of Scotland, I was staying at a youth hostel, and the warden of the youth hostel invited me to go for a walk up one of the mountains. It was a very beautiful summer's day with not a cloud in the sky. And so I accepted his invitation, and together we walked together, he knew the area well, up one of the mountains. And when we got to the top of the mountain, it wasn't that far, we sat down, enjoyed the view, had a chat. And as I looked, I saw another mountain peak not far away. And I said, let's go to that mountain peak as well. To which he replied, no, one mountain a day is enough for me. So he went back to the hostel, and I continued alone, which is a big mistake if you're in any wilderness. Unless you're a monk, it's always wise to go with a companion in case you meet with some trouble, which I did. Even though the sky was clear when I set out for walking to the other mountain, the second mountain, just as I was going up the second mountain, I saw clouds coming in from the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And as I went further up the mountain, the clouds started to cover the sky. And just before I reached the summit of the mountain, the clouds descended and covered the whole mountain. And I was enveloped in a mist which was so thick, if I held out my hand, I could not see it at the end of my arm. It was a very, very thick mist which occurred so quickly. And I thought that all I need to do is to turn around, retrace my steps, and go back the way I came. This was the first time I realized that a human being has no sense of direction at all. I thought I was going in the direction I came, but it turned out I was going in completely the opposite direction. Because as I was walking, fortunately I was aware enough, mindful enough to stop, because just one more step and I saw this cliff which went down forever. One more step, literally, and I would not be here. And I just couldn't see the cliff until the last moment because the mist was so thick. And that made me very scared, that the mist was so thick I could just take one false step, fall over a cliff, stumble over a boulder and break my leg, and no one would be able to find me. And I did hear stories of people being lost in the mist in Scotland for days on end. So I was in trouble. I was enveloped in mist, not knowing which way to go. Knowing that you had to do something because the mist could last for many days and you would become hungry, disorientated, maybe very cold, and you could die. So I just remembered some basic science. And my basic science, which protected me and saved my life, was the simple law of gravity, that water flows downhill. So I found a little stream and decided no matter what, I will follow that stream. Because if I followed that stream, it would always take me down, 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 in the correct direction. So I followed the little stream, it joined another stream, it wound back and forth, but I followed that stream without deviating from it. Down, down, down it went, until it got to a bigger stream, followed that, until I was so far down the mountain, I was underneath the cloud, and now could see clearly in all directions. I could see my way home. Following the stream out of the mist saved my life. And I've used that simile to understand how to get through doubt. Because doubt is like a mist, and your wisdom cannot see very far. You don't know which way to go, which type of meditation method I should try, even misunderstanding or not really knowing which way the Eightfold Path leads. And you can wander around in circles for years trying to find the correct meaning of the Eightfold Path or the way of meditation. But just like I followed a stream, knowing if that stream was going in the right direction downhill, I would eventually be underneath that mist, being able to see. For me, that stream was whatever led in meditation to greater peace, happiness, clarity of mind, lessening defilements, less anger, less greed. If it was leading in that direction, I knew that must be the path. Similar, not quite the same, but similar to the Buddha's advice to Upali and Mahapajapati, which I just mentioned earlier. So, in my meditation, in my practice of Buddhism, if anything makes me more angry, more upset, more greedy, less peace, I know that cannot be the path which the Buddha taught. But anything which makes me more peaceful, more happy, more mindful, with less problems, with less defilements, I know that must be the path of the Buddha. So whatever meditation you practice, or whatever combination of teachings which you use, a little bit of ajahn-brahm, a little bit of peroxide, or a little bit of vipassana, you can make your own combinations if you wish. But to find out what works for you, does that lead to greater peace, happiness, sense of freedom? Because you should know from your experience and understanding of the Dharma, what is the teaching of the Buddha, what is the Dharma. And I especially mention that to some people, lay people, because sometimes their husbands go on retreats and they come back from that retreat more of a pain in the arse, as they say in English, more difficult to live with, more angry, more upset. And they say, what is happening there? And I say, well, if it makes them worse, harder to live with, that cannot be the teaching of the Buddha. That cannot be the right type of meditation. But if it makes you happier, more aware, more peaceful, less able to be moved by the ups and downs, the praise and blame of the world, if it leads you to be more serene, more peaceful, that must be the teaching of the Buddha. That must be the Dhamma. And so I tell many lay people, you can tell if you're on the right path, not by how you feel, because it's very easy to deceive yourself, by asking your companions. You know, for those of you who come from Western countries, when you go and visit your parents, see how they feel about you. And if they are inspired, say, well, whatever this is, it must be something good, you must be going on the right path. One of my study viharikas, the people I ordained, he was from Norway. This is not Ajahn-brahm, another Norwegian monk at Bodhinyana Monastery. When he ordained, his parents and his brothers were very upset. They did not want him to waste his education and life on this crazy Buddhist monk business. To the point that when he decided to go and visit them after 3 or 4 years in Australia, he wrote the letter to them and he showed me their reply. And his elder brother replied saying, "You are welcome to come to Norway, but please wear a suit at the airport. You are not welcome in a robe." And I told him how to reply. "Tell your elder brother, I am coming. It's either this robe or naked. Make your choice. I will want no suit." So he wore his robe. And they weren't that happy with him, but he was a brother. But the second time he visited because his father died. So he had to go back and help the family with the unexpected death of the father. And after he returned, that's when I got this beautiful letter back from his brother to apologize. And he said, when he first became a monk, we were very, very upset, and we didn't want him to become a monk at all. But now we've seen just how he has helped our family so much with his wisdom and kindness during this terrible time of grief when our father died. We have seen something wonderful happen to our younger brother. He's changed. Please know, from this time on, he's got the whole family's 100% support. We don't understand Buddhism, but it certainly has helped us enormously. Thank you. So he's obviously made a great deal of progress, because his family has seen that. Now, your family, many of you here, are your fellow monks and nuns. They will know whether you've been making progress or not. They will know if you go back to your monastery after this retreat, and you too are more of a pain in the arse for your fellows in monastic life, then you've been wasting your time. If you have become a more peaceful, kind, wise person, you'll obviously be going on the right path. And also your own understanding of the Dharma and peace and happiness and meditation. If it is improving, you are getting more peace, more joy, even more nimittas. You must be getting on the right path. That is how you overcome doubt. Not by logic or reasoning, but by checking, being aware of your own experiences. And that simile of being lost in the mist and finding a way out by following a stream which was always going in the direction I want to go in, downhill, also serves for understanding the Eightfold Path to the point of Sowan, stream winning. Because until you're a stream winner, you cannot see and understand the Dhamma properly. I know it's very difficult as a monk, because you cannot claim to be a stream winner when you're not absolutely sure. Because if you're lying and deceiving somebody, you claim you're a Sowan, you are now Parajika. You have to leave the order. But, that's why it's so difficult. But, how does one achieve that stream winning when you don't really know which way to go? You can't see the Dhamma properly. Admit, if you're not a stream winner, there's always some confusion there. Stream winning is where you overcome that doubt. So what happens is you're like the simile of the mist. You're following a path which is always leading in the correct direction. This path, the Eightfold Path, leading to more peace, more clarity, more understanding, little by little, gradually. until you do get to that point when you see the Dhamma. It is like you're going in the right direction until you've gone underneath the mist. And now you can see where you need to be. You can see everything. It's clear. That is like the experience of being a stream winner. You followed the path, a greater peace, happiness, stillness, wisdom, less defilements, until you can actually see underneath the mist of the defilements. Now you can see exactly which path to go on to get back to the hostel. So that is how we overcome doubt. Not by argument or by thinking, but by experience. Is this path making you more peaceful, more happy, more harmonious in your life? And if it's not, there's something very, very wrong. So that is one of the great similes of how to overcome that doubt, and if it's the right practice or not. Because when you have doubt, you will always have, again, lots of thinking. And even for monks, thinking is one of the biggest problems which they have in meditation. Even though we are very sincere and we want to be peaceful, still that thought keeps on bothering us. It is an old habit. And because it's a habitual tendency in us, it's so difficult to eradicate. Thinking is our comfort zone. We're used to thinking. Even I blame school teachers for this bad habit of thinking. Because I remember as a young kid being in school, and my teacher in primary school, grade 1, 2 or 3 or something, would say, because my lane name was Peter, "Peter, what do you think of this?" And I said, "Nothing." And I got scolded for that. I could have been a great meditator much earlier, but my teachers forced me to think. Because to be still was considered to be stupid. Now it's the opposite for me. Great thinkers are the stupid ones. The calm, still ones, they're the wise ones. Because that was actually one of my experiences going to Thailand. Remember, I came from a great monastery. Oh no, sorry, a great, where it used to be a monastery, a great university. Cambridge, that's way up there. And I thought I was so intelligent. And then, you were having dinner with Nobel Prize laureates. And then you went off to Thailand and you realized how stupid they all were. And you came across a monk like Ajahn, and that guy was just so wise. Much more intelligent than the Nobel laureates I used to know. And that really put me in my place. All this thinking, all this hard work, it just made me more stupid. So I had to go in a totally different direction. And in fact, in that first year in Thailand, I heard the story of one of the great Thai forest monks. It was such a long time ago, I still, for the life of me, cannot remember his name. But this monk, he started life in a village in Thailand. And in those days, there would only be 4 years of schooling. Just grade 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you were out into the paddy fields, working. But this young man, he went to grade 1 at school, and at the end of grade 1, his teacher failed him. I don't know how you can fail grade 1 at school. Whether you can't do plasticine, or your stick figures don't work, or how can you fail grade 1? But he did. So all his friends advanced to grade 2, and he had to repeat grade 1. And the second year in grade 1, he failed again. He had to repeat grade 1 3 times. At the end of the third year, with the best compassion and will in the world, the teacher said, "No, sorry, we cannot pass this young boy. He's so incredibly stupid. So he has to go out of school." So they kicked him out of school. And somebody who can't even pass grade 1 after 3 years is too stupid to be able to pull a plough. So his parents realize it's a waste of time him joining the farming community. So there's only one thing left for such a stupid boy, and that was to join the monastery. That's what they used to do in Thailand. They probably do the same in Sri Lanka, do they? They do, okay. But not all of you started like that, I hope. So he went to one of the temples in the village. And sometimes you can criticize the temple monks, but many of them are just so compassionate and kind. And they do a wonderful service for the village and for the community. So, yeah, they may not meditate, their precepts may not be that good, but they still do a service, and I'm grateful for that, and I value them for that. So this abbot, he really tried hard to teach this young boy. Just simple chanting, apparently just Namo Tassa. He would manage to master Namo, and when he moved on to the next word, Tassa, he said, what was that first word again? No, he really was, a little bit hard to learn things. And after 2 or 3 years in the temple monastery, the abbot in the village monastery sort of was so fed up with him, I can't help him at all. There's only one place to send you, the last resort, the Aranyas, where you don't have to do much chanting. So this young novice was sent to one of the Aranyas in Thailand, where you don't have to learn very much, you don't have to do much chanting. And the teacher there just gave him a very simple meditation to do. And it was so easy for him. He soon got into jhanas, blissing out, and he soon became one of the great arahats of Thailand. Very famous teacher. Simply because his mind was so peaceful and still. He just didn't want to think, he couldn't think, which is why he couldn't pass grade 1. And he became so skilled in meditation. So if you have any problems in your meditation, it's the fault of your teachers at school who forced you to think and think and think. But apparently, and this is an interesting aside to this story, which I heard the first year I was in Thailand, that he still had to do some chanting. And the only way he could do chanting, for the lay people or giving anumodana after some dana, the only way he could do that was because he, very, very powerful mind, he could recall his previous lives, and he recalled one previous life when he was a bhikkhu, many, many centuries ago. And he used that whenever he had to do some chanting. He tied in, he connected with his previous life when he did learn the chanting. And that's actually, he got that chanting from his previous life, and it came out of his mouth to chant in public. But in this life, he could learn nothing at all. Interesting, just what happens when you have powers to get into your past life and bring that chanting back, and actually that's how you remember it. So, you were taught to think, poor things. So that is a huge problem for us. But because we've been thinking and thinking and thinking, it is our comfort zone. We are afraid of silence. Many of us. As soon as we become quiet, we interrupt it because we're not used to being quiet. And number 2, we always assume that thinking can solve our problems. If you have a problem in running this retreat, just think it out. There's a problem, there's no water in this resort for the next few days. So let's think how we can solve this problem. Yeah, you can't solve the problem through thinking, but when your mind is still, then all sorts of solutions can come up. Number 1 solution. It's great not to have a shower for a couple of days. If you want to do a super meditation, just smell. The monks can smell the nuns. Whoa! The nuns can smell the monks. Oh, that stinks. because we haven't washed. So you have free asupa meditation when we don't wash. And number 2, if you do want to make sure that you are kind to one another and you don't smell so much, keep your precepts. Because the Buddha said that somebody who keeps their precepts is fragrant. You do not need to use deodorant if you keep precepts. Because your precepts is a fragrance, unlike other fragrances, which doesn't just go with the wind, but goes in all directions. So it encourages you to keep better precepts so you don't smell so much. And number 3, it encourages you to stop worrying about the future. There's no water now, but I guarantee there'll be water soon. When, I don't know, but in the future there will be. Sometimes, maybe next year. But this is just from silence. You find you get a much more positive attitude. From thinking, you always tend to be negative. So a lot of times you'll see the difference between thinking and not thinking silence. Of the two, thinking is just like the noise from the mobile phone. It's very interrupting. Sometimes you're very peaceful and quiet inside. It's like a mobile phone goes on in your mind. That's thought. So it's so disturbing. So one of the first ways to overcome the problem of thinking is just to realize just how irritating thoughts are compared to silence. And to contemplate that thinking never gives you really good answers to problems, but silence does. If you want to be wise in the world or in the Dhamma, learn to be silent. I will now give a little exercise, which I usually give for lay people. But I gave this very same exercise, say about doing interesting things. About, somebody said last night that being a monk, monastic life is boring. And I say, absolutely not. It was about 18 months ago. It was actually during the Was of 2015. I took Sataha, the 7-day allowance, to go to a very prestigious conference in Korea. And it was the 2015 World Computer Congress in Daejeon, South Korea. And the organizers, they gave me business class tickets there and back, put me in a really nice 5-star hotel, and gave a big donation to the temple afterwards. That was really a good deal. And and I had to give the keynote address at the World Computer Congress. Now, what does a Buddhist monk know about computers? Not much. To do anything, if my computer got a little tablet goes wrong, I have to ask somebody else. Make sure I don't press the wrong button. But there, I was going on stage teaching all these computer experts from around the world. They had the European Union cybersecurity expert, big professor from Vienna there. And I don't know how many other executives from Samsung and LG. Life is good. LG is a computer company. And Google were there. All these experts. There was a World Computer Congress. And I had to give the keynote address. And this is what I did. This is how wisdom comes from silence, not from thinking. Because these have to be innovators. How can they see things no one else has seen before? How does insight arise from silence? And this is the very demonstration I did for them. I held up a bottle of water and I asked the audience, what is this? As I'm asking you now, what is this? Anyone know? Please speak. Interaction. Bottle of water, yes. What else is it? What else can you tell me about this? This is much easier talking with computer experts than a bunch of monks and nuns. So I will speak for you. Somebody said it's pink. Someone says it's about 100 grams. Someone said it was circular. Someone said it was plastic. Someone says it shines in the light. It sparkles. Somebody says it's got all ribs in it. And I kept on encouraging. What else do you see? Keep on telling me more. Until they all went silent. And I said, now you've run out of names and thoughts. Now you can start to see this. Because when thinking, we give something a name and we just assume that's it. We've understood it. Give it a name, bottle of water. It's much more than that. If you've got a naughty dog in the monastery, you can bang it on the head compassionately so it can be like a dog deterrent. If you've got some questions which are blowing in the wind, it can actually be a paperweight. If you for lay people, if they're making roti, it makes a very, very good machine for actually for flattening the flour, the bread. There's many, many things, but if you think it's just a bottle of water, you miss so much. So when you run out of names, then you can actually start to see things. See innovative ways in computing. See new ways of insight once you stop the thoughts. All the thoughts are just what you've done before. They're just old knowledge, old ways of seeing things, which hasn't really penetrated deep enough. So I say this to try and take some of the value away from thoughts. How the Buddha described thinking, and it's a wonderful simile. He said thinking is like a young man or young woman about to go out for the night, all clean, dressed up, perfumed, well-groomed, ready to go out for the night, who then puts on a garland of dead dog carcasses around their neck. That's really gross. I mean, dogs by themselves aren't that clean, but if they're dead and carcasses and you string them around their neck, who would do that? And the Buddha said, that's just like the thoughts. Carcasses of dead dogs hanging around his beautiful, peaceful mind. That's pretty strong language from the Lord Buddha, but it's a very good simile. All the thoughts are old stuff, dead stuff, they're carcasses. And you putting around this peaceful, beautiful chitta, why do you do that for? Just because bad habit, that's all. So little by little, in meditation, you start to value silence much more than thoughts. And when the value goes to silence more than thoughts, then the thoughts don't obsess you anymore. And you look for your wisdom in silence rather than through thinking. So, how can you actually do this? Because I go traveling a lot, and usually that because of my location in Perth, even coming to Sri Lanka, there's no direct flights from Perth to Sri Lanka, so I came via Singapore. Singapore is usually the place I go to first, and from there go to Thailand or Hong Kong or Korea. And so I often pass through Changi Airport in Singapore. And I've often passed many of these little lounges with these huge TV screens. And one which I even passed a few days ago on the way here was a lounge where people sit and have a huge screen which shows Premier League soccer. And there's always people sitting there watching the latest Premier League soccer match. And I've seen with my own eyes people there in Singapore suddenly jump up and shout, "Offside! Offside, ref!" Now, not only is that a replay, it's already happened a long time ago. But it doesn't matter how loud you shout in Singapore. They cannot hear you in Anfield, the home ground of Liverpool. In Old Trafford, Manchester United's ground, they can't hear you there either. It's too far away. So why is it that these sensible, intelligent people shout at a TV screen, "Goal! Yay! Offside! Foul!" Why do they do that? Have you ever seen lay people watching a movie? I've seen them doing this on the aircraft. They're watching a movie on the screen and they start crying. What are they doing that for? They say, "Oh, they've just died." So don't worry. They've died, but if you just wait for a little bit and run the movie again, you'll find they've been reincarnated. It's just a movie. Why do people get emotionally involved in movies or soccer matches? And the reason is the same why we get entangled in our thoughts. This is why I'm saying this simile. When people watch, a football match in Singapore, the psychology is they get so involved in the match, they actually, psychologically, they imagine they're right there in England watching that match live from the stands, from the seats around the stadium. They get so drawn in that they behave as if they're right there. In the movies, you get so entangled, so drawn in, that you are part of that movie. You are right behind the heroine when someone is creeping up behind them. Look out behind you! I've heard people say that. Remember when I was a student, one of the movies I remember as a student was Tarantula, who was a spider who was involved in a nuclear accident and was mutated into this huge monster, would creep up behind people. But I also remember, because this is movies and how fake they are, the monsters would only attack the pretty young girls. And I tell people these days, if you are fat and ugly or male, the monsters aren't interested in you. Anyway, and somebody in the audience would always shout out, "Look out behind you, Tarantula's coming." They get so sucked in, they would actually believe that they could help and warn the heroine. Now that is exactly what happens when you have a thought. You get sucked into it, entangled into it. If it's a fantasy, it's like it's real. It's really happening. If it's a memory of the past, again, it's like it's real. You're living there again. And I won't say this thing, I'll do this thing this time. And even fantasies about the future. And I call them fantasies. They're not plans, they're fantasies. Because so many of your plans of the future never ever worked out. In Majjhima 113, the Buddha said, whatever you imagine it to be, it will be otherwise. Amazing statement by the Lord Buddha. You cannot predict the future. You cannot even imagine it. If you do get it right, it's just chance. So why are you planning the future? For me, I have this little saying. I try not to plan the future. But I know if I don't plan the future, things will go wrong. But I know if I do plan the future, things will go wrong anyway. Either way, they go wrong. So I decide to enjoy my life before it goes wrong. Instead of spoiling my life, planning something which will go wrong anyway. That's wisdom. So what this does is cuts away at the reason why people think. And they don't get pulled into those thoughts, thinking they're real. The future isn't real. The past, your memories aren't real. Don't believe them. Fantasies aren't real. Those three things are all fantasies. When you accept that, then it's so easy to let them go. And one way of doing that is you may notice that when you do have a big thought stream coming up, you do get so entangled in it, you get drawn into it. And if you can imagine just staying back from the thoughts, looking at them at a distance, and resisting the temptation, the habit to get pulled into that thought stream. The thoughts are over here, but I'm way back. Then you can see them in perspective. The stimuli are developed for that. How big is my hand? Now my hand is so big, I can't see any of you. All I can see in the whole world is my hand. It's because I've lost perspective. If I put my hand where it belongs, out here, it's just a hand. It hasn't got smaller or bigger, but now I have perspective. I can see other things as well. In your thoughts, you get pulled in until all you can see is your thoughts, and you give them an importance they don't deserve. If you can put your thoughts where they belong, at a distance from you, then you have perspective, and it's easy then to let them go. They're not that important. You can see other things other than the world of thoughts. So, those are practical ways. Imagining you have a thought come up in the mind, put distance between you. Imagine just you are watching from over here and the thoughts are over there. And then, like a TV, you never get entangled in them. One of the other problems people have, I think I'm going to do this talk on problems in meditation this afternoon as well, because there's no way I'm going to finish everything I need to say about problems in meditation. But that's one of the main ones, thoughts. After a while, when the thoughts disappear and you're peaceful, the peace is so much more enjoyable. And after a while, you just can't be bothered with thinking. And even with planning. I'm very, very uncompassionate when it comes to planning. On this retreat, please excuse me, Vedametavihari, I just give all of that to you. Totally delegate. And I don't plan at all. I wait for someone to knock at the door and then say, you've got to come and give a talk. Okay, I'll give a talk. Wait for someone to say enough and then I'll stop. It's much nicer when you don't plan. And I don't plan when I'm going to go back. You know, one day, is it Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday, you knock at my door, ajahn-brahm, the car's here, so off I go. It's so nice when you don't have to plan anything, so free. And for people who are Mahanayakas, the trick is to delegate. Give it to somebody else. And they're very happy to do the work. So for me, please don't tell Ajahn Brahmali this, when I'm Metavihari, but I give him so much work. I delegate. So I can have a much easier time. So delegation is a trick. So I don't have to think so much, I don't have to do so much, I don't have to plan so much. Life is much easier when you don't have to think. Oh, I should maybe say this little story as well. Sometimes it's a big burden, all the stuff you have to do in life. Even you monks, sometimes you've got to do duties, or sometimes you have to do some electrical work for the temple because, they know how good you are doing electrical work. And there was this time in Thailand, Ajahn Chah, he was building his main Sema hall. And after the Sema hall was finished, there was this huge pile of earth which had to be moved. Now, I don't know why monks do this in Thailand. It would have been so easy to get one of these earth movers and get that to move the earth. But no, he was so stingy. He said, I've got all these monks, free labour, so we had to move that earth. Do you have to do that in Narayana as well? Do labouring work? You've done very well. But laying the concrete blocks, you see, free labour. You should start a union for monks like they do in the West. But that was what happened to us. So Ajahn Chah, after our one meal of the day, and I showed you that meal was just not very much at all, he said, see that earth over there? It needs to be moved, so you monks have to move it. And that was a lot of earth with wheelbarrows and shovels. It took us 3 days to move that earth. From about 9 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night, they used these hurricane lanterns, these kerosene lanterns, so we could work till we almost dropped. And we did have Coca-Cola. That was only the treat. And Ajahn Chah, we caught him saying, oh, it's really much cheaper, just 2 Coca-Colas per monk and it gets it done. That's much cheaper than hiring these big machines. But I had a lot of faith. This was for your teacher. You owed so much to your teacher, so we did that. And it was sweaty, especially for a Western monk. Lots of mosquitoes, really dirty, your robes smelt. But after 3 days, it was finished. And so when I went to bed after 3 days, I thought the following morning, I would have a nice rest, shower, wash some robes and meditate, catch up on my meditation. But that night, Ajahn Chah left for another monastery. And the second monk, his name is Ajahn Liam, he's now the abbot there. Ajahn Liam, he said after our breakfast, our lunch, our everything, one meal, he said, I've been thinking, where we've put that earth is in the wrong place. I think we should move it. Another 3 days of hard work. He had a point. Another 3 days of hard work, pushing wheelbarrows in the hot weather, sweating, bitten to death by mosquitoes. Oh, but, I still had my faith. And finally we finished it. And I was really dirty and smelly now. But now tomorrow I could have a nice shower and rest. But that night, Ajahn Chah came back. And after our meal, he said, I thought I told you to put the earth here. You put it over there. Move it back. And that is when I lost all my faith. Because these senior monks, the Nayakas, the abbots, they don't do the work. You have to do it. So I was really upset. I was only about 2 or 3 years as a monk. And so 3 more days of hard work in front of me, shoveling earth, pushing wheelbarrows. That's not what I became a monk for. I became a monk to get jhanas and get enlightened, not to do this stuff. And I was so upset, I confess I started swearing. And I swore in English, thinking the Thai monks would not understand what I was saying. But you can always see when a person's unhappy. And that was when one of the Thai monks came up to me. It wasn't Ajahn Chah, it was another Thai monk, and I'd always be very thankful for him. Because he said, Brahmawanso, pushing a wheelbarrow is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. And straight away, what beautiful Dhamma that was. And I've used that throughout the next 40 years of my monastic life, still use that. Whenever I have a heavy schedule. It's not a heavy schedule. To think about all the talks I have to give, that is suffering. But just to do it is easy. So whatever you have to do in your life is easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. Organizing this retreat, Venerable Vihari, easy. Thinking about it is the hard part. And whatever you do in life, even dying is easy. You just lay there and let it happen. Thinking about it is the hard part. That is why the thoughts, if you don't see them for what they are, as an irritation, as a burden, and let go of them now, you're going to be in big trouble the rest of your life. So, leave the thoughts alone. They're up there, nothing to do with me. They're just like movies, they're just rubbish. I can't trust them, and I can see to the left and right and above and below those thoughts is beautiful silence. And that's what my mind inclines towards. Little by little, as you meditate more, you'll appreciate silence more. And all the great innovations, great ideas, great insights, they never come through thoughts. They always come from silence. That's where insights come from. You can't think your way to Nibbana. From silence, it arises. So anyway, the next part was how to deal with distractions. Because even in Nauyana or whatever Aranya you come from, it's so noisy. There's always some monk who is making a noise, banging doors. In this retreat, there's always some dog yelping. There's not dog yelping. What was actually going on last night? There's all this chanting, was it, from the distance? I could hear so much noise last night. I don't know what it is. If it's not that, it's the thunderstorms, or it's the cricket. There's always something making a noise. So how do you deal with such distractions of noise? And I did mention Ajahn Chah. It's not the noise disturbs you, it's you who disturb the noise. And there we go again, another noise. How do you deal with distractions? You change your perception of them. One of my monks, his brother was visiting from Europe. And he came up to ask me, is it okay if my brother comes to stay for a few days? And I told him it's one of the problems in Bodhinyana Monastery where I live. There's hardly any space, even when your brother visits. So I said, when's he come? He said, look, we're full up at that time. There's no space, no room free at all. So it doesn't matter, we grow up together. Can I have permission? He shares my kuti. I said, yeah, of course, it's your kuti. If you wish to have him stay in the same room as you, that's fine. You're allowed 3 nights. According to the Vinaya, and, with a layperson. But I said, how old are you? And he was, I think, in his late 40s. And how old's your brother? He's a bit older than me. I said, look, men of your age snore. You can't stop it. It's just nature. So are you prepared to stay in the same room with someone who snores? I said, yeah, I know he snores. My plan is to make sure I go to sleep first, so I can't hear his snoring. He has to listen to mine. That's a trick if you're staying in a dormitory. Go to sleep first. But what happened was, of course, his brother fell asleep first and was snoring really loudly. And only a small room, a kuti. And so he thought, how am I going to go to sleep tonight? And then he remembered the Dhamma. One of my monks, I'm very proud of him. He said, it's not the noise disturbs me, it's me who disturbs the noise. So, I am going to change my perception of snoring. And it only took him about 15 minutes, he said. And he could imagine the snoring like this amazing modern experimental musical symphony, which was cutting edge with its rhythm and with its tones, and it's just the way it all put together. And he said it didn't take him that long, and the music appeared to be beautiful, sonorous, and really interesting. When it became pleasant, he said that was the last thing he remembered when he woke up in the morning after a nice deep sleep. He changed his perception. So if there are people talking outside your room when you're trying to meditate, change your perception. Oh, this is maybe like chanting of the devas, sort of wafting over Bandarawela resort, because the devas are so inspired by all these monks meditating here. The door bangs, bang, and you can see, oh, I'm not quite sure what that is, but that must be just it might be just like in the olden days when there's an earthquake, it must mean there's another arahat has arisen in the world. So maybe it's just a result of an arahat arising and the door is shaking. Change your perception of things. And then it doesn't bother you at all. So that is one way of when we have distractions. The distraction is only a distraction when we give it a negative interpretation. If you give it a positive interpretation, oh, maybe I wasn't really that mindful. And they slammed the door to wake me up, to remind me to come into the present moment. Maybe I was fantasizing about something, and that brought me back again. You know, in the Zen tradition, they do that all the time. Bang! Just is supposed to get you into the present moment. It's a lot of gomayang, but you can use that just to make sure that you change your perception of distractions. Or a mosquito starts to buzz in your ear. I thought they only did that in Thailand, but apparently last night a mosquito buzzed in my ear before it bit me. Why do they do that? Why don't they just bite you without announcing what they're going to do? They're sadistic. Mosquitoes. Just bite and get over it. Don't come and tell me beforehand. That's like those torturers saying, this is going to hurt, this is going to hurt, this is going to hurt. But anyway, you can actually change your perception. That when the mosquito bites your skin, maybe you have excess blood pressure. And reducing some of your blood pressure, that may be a wonderful thing to do. Oh, at least you're giving a gift of blood, of food to this little mosquito, so they can be really happy. You've got plenty left. You can spare a little bit more. So I don't mind giving some Australian, because we eat really well in Australia, so this is high protein blood. Not only that, it's holy blood. So that mosquito is getting holy blood. Oh, you're very, very lucky mosquito. So change your perception, and then it's not irritating anymore. So many distractions are because we give a negative interpretation to what is happening. And it's an hour now, so I better stop now. But there'll be more about how to deal with distractions in meditation later on. Already I talked about don't think, just do it. And also that if you see the difference between silence and thinking, silence is always much more important. Put the thoughts out here. Try and get a distance between them, and then they won't get entangled in them. And you won't be like some of these people who think the thoughts are more real than reality. Like the people I saw watching a football match and imagining they were there and shouting out at the referee. Okay, thank you for listening.